What's going on, beautiful people, adventurers near and far? Welcome to Point Noir, home of the Point Noir podcast, where we promote Catalyst as a means for change for men of color. We share inspiring stories of men of color who've gone out and done it. We give away free passports so other men can go out and do it, and we have a great time along the way. My name is Jerry III, aka Kimono Jack, and this is the 52nd session of the Point Noir podcast. Listen, y'all, thank you so much for your patience. I know this is a Wednesday drop and not a Tuesday drop, but your boy was dog tired. I spent a week out in Madrid, did a launch of the show live from Madrid last week, so thank you everybody who tuned in and dealt with that little bit of audio quality. Got a lot of elements there. But on my way back, I was invited graciously by the organizers of the Afros and Audio Podcast Festival, and it was for us, by us, and it was so dope to be inspired, encouraged, and challenged by all of these black podcast creators and experts. It was just amazing. Like, I thought I kind of had a little something going on, and I have a book full of notes where I'm like, no, you need to work on this. You need to talk to this person. It was great. So shout out to Talib, Erica, Sean, everybody else in the crew who helped put that together. It was amazing. I've been to other podcast events, and by far this was the best. So if you're interested in podcasting, if you're interested in community, in the community of people of color, this is definitely one you want to keep your eye out on. So follow them on Instagram at Afros and Audio, and trust me, you won't be disappointed. They're always promoting other great black podcast creators. On another note, if you're not following us on IG, come on now, what you doing, fam? At Point Noir Show. We already started one of our giveaways for our Podaversary. It's called the Day Trip Giveaway. We are featuring products by Mboise Originals, which is a really dope company, black owned, and they also plant trees in Haiti with every purchase. So you definitely want to check that out, getting that free giveaway. It's open to men and women, so that's what we do. You know, we're out here just to celebrate and really say thank you to everyone who's been supporting the show for the past year. And also, it's nice to, pop off with a little bit of swag. So the Day Trip giveaway is up live right now. It ends July 30th, so make sure you check it out. If you don't have an IG account, handle your business, get that fixed, and I'd love to see you as one of the entrants. Lastly, we have about 5 days left before we close out the passport giveaway for this month. So if you or somebody you know is a man of color over the age of 21 who wants to see the world, we got you covered. You just have to enter. All of those instructions are on our IG page, like I said, at Point Noir Show. That's the place to figure out most of what we're doing. But if for some reason you just can't get there, send me an email, because I really want to help. I really want to understand the best way to reach these men of color who have yet to see the world but desire to do so. So shoot me an email at kimonojack@pointnoirshow.com. I'll be happy to reply and see if there's something I can do to help you work through your situation or open up some more channels for getting passport entrance. Today's show is going to be a little bit different. We don't have a featured guest. It's actually just myself talking, but I wanted to share about the Podaversary, what it's meant to, podcast with this platform and this community for the past year, and then also introduce a new segment that I'd like to start featuring on the show about once a month. So I'm really excited to share all this, and I think this intro's gone on long enough. So I'll see you on the flip side. And again, shout out to 1 year. Wow. So here we are, a year into the Point Noir podcast. And first and foremost, I am so grateful, so humbled every week when I realize how many people are actually listening to the show and how it keeps growing. So before I even get into any of the less important details, which are still very important, I have to say thank you to everyone listening to the show, everyone who shared, everyone who has suggested a man of color to enter into the contest to win his free passport. It's really y'all, the audience, the listeners, who are driving this show. I'd have 5 listens, 5 downloads a week, and I'd be happy with it. But because of all of you, because of your commitment, because of how you value the show and the people in your lives, this show does well over 5 listens a week. In general, our guests are getting hundreds of listens within weeks of going live, and it's amazing to know that their message is reaching and impacting so many people in a positive way. In this sort of era that we're in, a lot of people use the term influencer, and while that's not at all my ambition for myself as Kimono Jack or the platform, adding value, having something that comes into your life that, is positive and doesn't detract away from the other things that you have going on is really important. As best as I can, I'd love to provide something that empowers you to go out and do the world in your way, the same way many of our guests have. So just thank you so much from the bottom of my heart. It means the world to me. Your time, your attention, your patience with myself. It's really dope, and thank you so much. Speaking of our guests, we have over 50 guests recorded and aired on this show right here, and I have to give them a huge shout out as well. The majority of these guys, actually, I'll say 95% of them, have no idea who I am. Just a random dude shows up in your DMs. We start talking. They schedule the time. They spend an hour with me on a call-in show. Sometimes the technology works. Sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes we have many, many redos, and yet they come through. They're here for the cause. And look where we are a year later. Without them, we wouldn't be here. I wouldn't have content in the same way. I wouldn't be able to have the consistency in the same way. And again, I appreciate their time, effort, and attention. They've really helped create something that has some momentum behind it. The coolest thing about all the guests is they're so diverse. There's so much diversity within men of color who travel. And we don't just feature black men on the show, though a lot of the guests are, but we've had indigenous brothers on, Latinx brothers, one brother from Iran. That's a big deal. We're getting more diverse as we continue to grow, and we're learning all these different aspects of traveling as a man of color that are different between us, but then so many commonalities that are the same. And that's really, really cool. As the host who sits here and kind of goes through the same format every single week, I'm always learning something different. I'm always getting value from our guests. And again, they don't have to be here. They don't have to do this. In fact, there are very many people who never reply to my DMs or never get around to scheduling. And that's cool. People have other things going on. But the ones that do really show up and show out. And I do my best to make them look like superstars on the show. And I think they really do. Everybody is surprised at how well their interviews come out. And I'm like, bro, this is the point. This show is almost as much for giving away passports and inspiring as it is for giving an outlet for men of color to share their stories, because I definitely know what it's like to have a changed perspective, to have something that maybe I didn't even feel like I could describe with words, but still wanting to share it. So in some ways, this is kind of therapeutic for myself. I think therapeutic for the guests that come on the show, because it can be so difficult to find people in your immediate circle, especially people that you grew up with and really care about. If they haven't traveled, if they haven't had these adventuresome experiences, it's very difficult to kind of relate this information, but it sits on your heart. It's important. Talking through it will help you kind of process it better, but where are you going to go? Well, you're going to come to the point. That's what we do here. Kimono Jack is here for y'all as well. I think one of the last things I want to share about this year of podcasting is the physical impact, the actual impact that the platform has had on men of color who want to see the world. We've sponsored 12 men of color to get their passports for free and pay nothing. And that right there is such a gift. It's an honor. It's an opportunity to actually have impact. One of the things that I struggle with sometimes is being around people with amazing ideas or seeing people with great intentions that never execute. And when I started this platform, I refused to do that. I said, hey, I have a little bit of money in the bank right now. Let me just buy people passports. Let me figure out a process. And it's a process, step by step. We do the same thing every month. I've been able to share that method with others who are interested in doing similar things. And I wasn't worried about the money. It'll come back to me in some form. Kindness, the amount of guests who come on the show, it doesn't matter. But the thing is, I could make a difference. So let's do what made sense. Let's do what was practical. And out of those 12 men, 2 of them have actually left the country. One of them has been featured back on the show again. And for me, one was enough. I know the potential that my passport has opened up for me, and I got mine, almost 7 years ago. So one was enough because we have no idea what the ability to travel the world, the ability to be influenced and meet other people from different circumstances and different cultures can do for a person. I'm convinced that travel, specifically international travel, is a catalyst for significant change for men of color, and I stand by that. So if we can enable, if we can give an opportunity to just one man of color, who knows what that's going to turn into when he comes back to his community, his circle of influence, and sees a different side of himself that he's just not able to see, particularly here in the United States. And on that note, I have to give another huge shout out to all of the partners, the wives, the girlfriends, the lovers, the boo things, whatever, who are out here influencing these men for the better. Keep applying that positive pressure. I appreciate it. We need it. They need it. And it doesn't go overlooked, especially from my vantage point right now, how big of a deal that is. During this recent panel where I spoke about podcasting in the show, one of the things I said was the best way to get a man overseas was to give him a passport, and I'm starting to rethink that. I think the best way to get a man overseas is to find him a love interest who has some international trips planned. That's really what the key is. That's really the key. That's game right there. That all being said and shared, I just wanted to spend some time talking about what it's been like to have this platform, to grow and direct this platform for the past year. This is something completely new for me. I've learned so much about podcasting, so much about people, so much about travel, so much about being a host and being a facilitator of discussions like this to make sure the guests look as amazing as possible, but also provide the most amount of value for every individual listener as much as possible. So it's been a learning experience for myself. I appreciate your patience, and it's been one full of adventure, even from behind the microphone, but it's also been a humbling one because things do not always go as planned, and yet people still listen, still tune in. So I definitely appreciate that. Going forward into this next year, man, so many things come up to mind. Going into this, when it comes to this next year of doing the show, so many ideas come to mind, so many opportunities, and it's really too much to talk about here. It's literally 12 of them. But I'll just say that I want to keep reaching men of color who don't have their passports. I want to keep that active. I want to give them the opportunity to travel and see the world. I also want to make sure we're meeting up more often. So maybe pop-up events, maybe mini travel conferences or events, things where we can start to meet each other and learn who we are face to face and maybe grow relationships after that. And then the last thing I want to do is I want to create opportunities for the men who've been on the show and had these experiences to become more of the leaders that they want to be. So when they go into their respective communities and circles of influence, they can also be really impactful. I think sitting in between those worlds of introducing men of color to travel, outdoors, and adventure, and also making sure that the men who've had those experiences can continue to evolve to be the most effective, the most enlightened, the most capable version of themselves is going to be extremely not only satisfying, but necessary. As someone who's traveled, who's adventured, who's done all of these things, I still need support. I still need to grow. And listen, times are changing rapidly. Those of us who are not keeping up, especially men, are being left behind. And it's important that we're present, that we offer the things of value that we have to offer, but it needs to be done in a right way. We need to deal with this toxic masculinity. We need to learn how to heal ourselves. We need to know how to talk to each other, build healthy community, get rid of some of this machismo. This platform deals with the men of color, so anything I can do to help progress them, no matter what their state in life, I'd really like the opportunity to do so. So right now the angle is travel, and that's what we do, but who knows where we might grow to in the future. Bref, all of that being said, this show has become immensely important as a thing I do in my life, the consistency, the work that goes behind it. If I didn't love this, I would not be doing it. So again, thank you all for listening in. Thank you all for giving me an opportunity to share, to create, to express, and be myself as Jerry III and Kimono Jack. I appreciate it immensely, and there will be more to come. So make sure that you guys check out the giveaways we have going on for this month. It's celebratory. I'm not even big into the number of followers on IG, but I wanted to make sure we had a reason to celebrate, because celebrating is important. It's easy to get bent out of shape about stuff. There's so much news and information that'll hit you in a week and make you feel down. Let's partner with some cool people, a Black-owned company that actually makes dope stuff. Like, I've been rocking their stuff for months and months. I actually gave it away at the first event we did in February. But it's a Black-owned company. I really mess with the vibe. Y'all, check out the day trip giveaway. And I haven't even announced this yet. We have another one, the excursion giveaway. So if you're listening, you will be hip in the game. That'll be announced later today. But we have 2 giveaways going on for our celebration of our 1-year anniversary. So again, shout out to you. Shout out to us. Here's to many more sessions in the future. And I can't wait to see you back here at the point. All right, y'all. Time to gather up around ye old digital fire. Grab that refreshing beverage of choice. Find that cozy corner on your couch. Sit back, relax, and let's talk a little bit about adventure. It's come to my attention that maybe I haven't done enough in sharing my own adventures, and maybe how that's changed my perspective as a man of color, as a traveler, as just a human being. And I'll be totally transparent. It's taken me a while to get to this point of comfort with the show, of just having the mental bandwidth and producing a weekly show to say, okay, Kimono Jack will get on the mic and start sharing some of his adventure stories about how I even got here, how I became Kimono Jack. I thought the best place to start for this mini series right here is to start at the beginning, talk about my first international trip. My first trip occurred when I was 16 years old. I was in French class, where I mostly slept. I didn't really learn much. But I was in French class, and we had the opportunity to spend like 10 days in Canada. We'd go to Montreal and Quebec. And I'd never been abroad before. I traveled somewhat through the States with my family, as far west as Chicago, as far south as Disney and Florida, but that was about it. We weren't avid travelers, though we did go to the Pocono Mountains in Pennsylvania every year. So I definitely jumped at the opportunity. I don't recall finances being a problem, though my parents made sure that I knew it was important. And at the time, I didn't even need a passport to get into Canada. I think I just needed my birth certificate. So after several weeks of sleeping in French and planning for the trip, we were going to get to Canada. Here's the thing, though. We weren't taking a plane. We were going to take a bus. And if I remember correctly, that ride was somewhere between 12 and 14 hours of high school kids going to Quebec. A long as hell bus ride, y'all. Like, the wheels on the bus went round and round and round. But eventually we made it. We traveled from Pennsylvania all the way to Canada, across the border, showed them my birth certificate as the Border Patrol got on the bus. That was a little bit intimidating. And we made it to Canada. Looking back on the experience, there were a couple things that stood out about that trip for me. The full trip isn't in detail, and we definitely don't have time to go over it anyway. But to me, it was just neat to be in a space where you heard a little bit of French. The food looked a little bit different. The people engaged you in a different way. One of the highlights for my classmates was going to a maple syrup farm where they had freshly tapped AA, AAA grade maple syrup, and they put it on everything. Because of how I was raised, I cannot really eat maple syrup. It tastes way too sweet. It's too healthy. It's too organic for me. I need like some log cabin, some Aunt Jemima. That was primo in my household. But it was just interesting to get a taste for the food. Ordering at restaurants and just hearing a little bit of French here and there made me think that, my studies in French class might not totally be wasted outside of the sleeping part. It was just cool to say, oh, this looks like something I have at home, but it's different. Or this sounds like a word I know at home, but it's different. To me, that just kind of kept my interest. And there were a couple moments that really stood out for me. One was being in old Quebec and looking at this graffiti wall. Now, there's a whole thing about what's graffiti and what is street art, but for me, I just love beauty. I love colors. I love pretty things and artistic design, and they had this entire underpass of a bridge covered in graffiti. I haven't been back since, so I'm not sure if it's still there, but there was a memorial to 9/11 at the time. I was in high school at the time, so this had to have been about 2006 when I went on this trip, so 9/11 was still very recent. There was this beautiful memorial displaying the two towers, and when I say underpass of a bridge, like this was like a 80-foot wall. This was a huge wall, but what the community allowed artists to do was use this wall as an outlet for their creative energies, for their creative desires. Instead of going out and tagging different areas of this historic city, they gave them a place to do that. I remember thinking, that is so cool. I wish we did that in the States. Being from the suburbs of Philadelphia, Media, Pennsylvania, shout out 610. There wasn't a ton I knew about urban life and urban living, but I knew that this wasn't a thing in the States. I knew this wasn't used in the same way, and I thought it was such a neat idea. And I remember walking under that underpass. I kind of left my group. I had my Zune player, if y'all remember one of those. Didn't have an iPod. I had a Zune, and I was walking through with my headphones on, listening to MF Doom, who's one of my favorite artists and creators ever. And I remember just tearing up as I was looking at this beautiful art. Like, it literally brought tears to my eyes, because I was in this foreign city. I was far from home. I was inspired by the music. I was inspired by the graffiti culture, which, you know, if y'all know the history of hip hop, that stuff all goes hand in hand. And I just felt embraced. I felt surrounded by the moment. It was a very warm feeling that sort of cut through all of these layers, whether that be my identity as a student, my identity as an American, my identity as a very young black man. It really just cut through all of that and hit this center, I'll say, in my heart or in my spirit, that was the reaction, was tears. That was a real moment for me, where I saw and felt part of myself reflected so far away from home, but yet the right elements were in place. I had Doom going on the track, probably listening to the Mad Villainy album, and I had this art in front of me, something that I knew originally came from our culture. You know, we put graffiti on. We made that an element of hip hop. You know what I'm saying? I can say I've always had reflective moments when I travel where things just hit. No matter what's going on the trip, there's a moment where something breaks through everything that's going on, kind of all the bullshit in your head, all the bullshit about your perceptions. And for me, that response is, you know, someone cutting onions real close to my face, like just your eyes well up and you just feel kind of a sense of belonging. You feel grounded. You feel seen in some way. It's actually very difficult to describe. I haven't thought to describe it before, but that was a huge moment for me. The rest of Quebec was beautiful, very old, very traditional city. We did minimal speaking of French, which for all my language speakers, I don't advise that. If you're going to start speaking a language, start by speaking the language. It doesn't matter if it's just hola or bonjour, just start speaking it. So that's a way that the whole language program was not as effective as it could be. But we enjoyed the city. You know, other things that stood out, especially as we went to Montreal, was seeing the old Olympic Festival Stadium from when they had the Olympics there in Montreal. That was pretty cool. We also went to a gymnastics park. Basically, a professional gymnastics facility would allow people to come in there for kind of like recreational gymnastics. Nowadays, you could probably find that under, you know, adult gymnastics. So you're a beginner with gymnastics, but they have the trainers and people to help you there. So I got to walk a tightrope, which was a little bit easier than I thought. They had these trampolines that would spring you up 20 feet in the air. That was pretty dope. We were just kids having fun, didn't have to do homework for like a week. It was pretty cool. Other elements of the culture that we got to see, I'll definitely say this because it's just the kind of show, but seeing Pinot on the TV at 16 just lets you know you were in a different place, that this culture values things differently than they do at home. I don't remember staying up to watch the pornographic material a bunch, but flipping through the channels at 2 a.m. or midnight or whatever, that's what you saw. And it was like, oh, okay, well, that's kind of neat. Again, neat being the operative word, but it just lets you know that you were somewhere different. And of course, if you travel through Europe, if you travel through Canada, you'll notice that the way they feel about nudity and censorship, or even the music that gets through, my goodness, for us, it's like, wow, y'all just going to drop F-bombs in every track? They take our music and they play it unedited. They just have different sensibilities. And, you know, content and meaning aside, it's important to notice that just because you grew up in a culture, a society that feels a certain way about curse words, or even if they have a word for curse words, everybody doesn't feel that way. And I think for myself, it started giving me the clue that, wait a second, the way that I was raised or the way that I grew up is not the way that I have to stay. It's not the way that I have to continue growing up. And just those small moments like that. Of course, it's kind of silly to talk about porn at 16, right? It's normally a very hormonal response. But the thing is, it's options, it's different. It gives you a different insight as to how other people live. And I think that's one of the most important things about traveling with intention. What you do and how you do it is not the only way to do anything, ever. That's just not true. Even in the United States, it's not the way it works. But when you go abroad, you are forced to see that. You're forced to experience that. And then you have a choice. You really have a choice. You can embrace it, you can observe it, or you can reject it. And just because they do things that you might not agree with other places doesn't mean you have to do them. You just need to observe it and understand that it's different and not judge it. But rejecting it, I definitely think, from my later years in travel, is where people end up in really difficult spots. Because these countries aren't going to change. These cultures aren't going to change. You're not going to be the person to set that forth. The average person doesn't have that sort of power or influence. And really, what right do we have to exert that power or influence in another country? Anyway, mini rant over. We go on this trip, we see the stadium, we go do the Olympic Park thing, we have some decent food, we go have maple syrup. But those are the moments that really stood out for me. And coming home, I was proud that I was able to go out of the country. It was something that I never did with my parents. I was excited to share, but definitely didn't have the sort of ability to share it en masse. I wasn't thinking about being a blogger or creating a platform. And I didn't travel again for, my goodness, almost 10 years. I didn't take a single trip out of the country. I spent a lot of time going back and forth through the country, through college, running track and field. But the idea of international travel never really came up, but I knew in my mind that I did want to adventure. I think for me, at a young age, the world always gave me a sense of curiosity of what's out there, what's new, what's different, what does it smell like? I always had that as a kid, but it took some time for me to start seeing that in my lifestyle. I think that's one of the things I always share with anyone who asks me about travel, is that you don't have to make this a lifestyle right away. You can just take your vacations with your job or negotiate for another week of vacation. You know, don't take that extra $5,000 bonus in pay if you don't need it. Negotiate for more days off, more paid time off, and start taking trips. And if this becomes a passionate hobby or interest you like to do on the side, then you start taking more trips. That's when you start looking at getting remote opportunities or doing a remote year. But in the beginning, just starting is enough. Just starting is enough. I didn't travel out of the country again for another 8 years until I graduated college and started working for an international company. But that is a story for another day. Hope you enjoyed this segment of what might be called the Kimono Chronicles. I'm not sure yet, but again, just an opportunity to give you some of my perspectives and insights and show you how they've evolved over time. So I definitely want to start with the beginning, but we definitely have way more stories. So I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you'd like to hear more of it. And if you do, give me some feedback. Let me know. Leave a review. Hit me up in the DMs. I'm always out there. And I hope you enjoyed your refreshing beverage. I'm definitely here with my highball scotch. So cheers to you for tuning in and listening, and I hope to see you next time. All right, so a little bit of a different show format as I mentioned earlier, but thanks for kicking it with us, kicking it with me, Kimono Jack. So many awesome things have happened over the past year, so many more awesome things to come. Again, big up to Afros and Audio for inviting this guy onto your stage to speak in front of your audience. I can't wait to share the audio and video with everybody. Y'all, make sure you check out the day trip giveaway. And because you're still tuning in, we have another one called the Excursion. If you like the day trip, the Excursion's even better. I will be releasing that later today on Instagram at Point Noir Show. Open to men and women, just a way to say thank you for supporting the platform, being out there, and also to give you all a little bit of drip for your travel swag as you hit these summer trips, because I know they coming up. Listen, you need to be prepared. I'm here to equip you. Thank y'all all again for this past year. It's been an amazing experience. It's challenged me personally. It's challenged me physically and mentally. However, it gets done every week, which is how I know I definitely have a passion and heart for this. And the feedback and response that y'all give, the love is so real. So thank you so much for being in my corner in that way. Even if you don't know that you have an impact, you definitely do. Again, passports every single month. Make sure you tap your mans on the shoulder and be like, hey, my mans, where's your passport at? Check out the Point Noir show. They got you. It's facts. We've been doing this. 12 dudes, a dozen. How many more do you need? We do this, B. So hit us up. We'll do our best to take care of you. And with that being said, hope y'all travel safely. Smiles on your faces. Beautiful places. Enjoy yourselves. Take care of each other. I'm Jerry the Third, a.k.a. Kimono Jack, signing off.